Hi, I just wanted to offer a quick overview and sort of teaser for my Ford CloudSec Europe talk, how to 10x your cloud security without the Series D. So this talk offers my pitch for effective high leverage ways of scaling cloud security, and especially ways that avoid some of the inherently linear or super linear growth that happens with traditional cloud security programs, and even more so warns you away from some places you can over index, over invest, and frankly, spend too much of your time when you're building a cloud security program. The big assumption, and I offer many more in the full talk, but the big one I look at is the idea that inherently in cloud security, we often are just building bigger, worse dashboards that are more full of more problems. We improve visibility without thinking about what we're actually going to do with the data we derive, whether that is data from a CSPM, like Chris Ferris has talked about previously. Travis has coined this big dashboard of problems. It's the idea that if you have, 10 critical vulnerabilities, that's your problem. If you have 100 critical vulnerabilities, you're never going to dig out. If you have 1,000 critical vulnerabilities, you've basically declared bankruptcy on prioritization. And so it's much harder to focus on the high risk issues and killing bug classes versus trying to, improve visibility for its own sake on vulnerability and insecurity. I cover 6 topics in the full talk, starting with a security program and the role of invariants, and then covering specifically 4 areas that I think are crucial to a cloud security program. The first 3, vulnerability and asset management, identity and access management, and detection engineering, are all places I actually talk about the limits of desirable security and warn folks away from overinvesting. Well, deployment is an area I think that is an unsolved challenge, and we need approaches that are based on those invariants and those secure by default controls. So, from a security program perspective and an invariant perspective, we're looking at scaling cloud security as fundamentally relying on reducing attack surface. This means you start with a secure account architecture. In AWS, this is the model with AWS organizations, account level boundaries. Then within a single account, you do service and action allow lists to dramatically increase your attack surface. You can go seek out, I have a blog post about this over on my website. But this is a way that you can take AWS, which is currently enabled by default across all of the cloud control plane, and move it more towards the more secure Google model where services require enabling before they can be adopted. Zero trust, which Kane has written about, and zero touch, which I covered at a previous Ford CloudSec talk, are really high leverage philosophies and technical approaches for managing access in the cloud and managing your perimeter. And fundamentally, this is all about identifying the current baseline, making sure that everything is up to baseline, at which point you can implement invariants for that existing stance. And eventually you identify a new target goal and repeat the process. Overall, I really like to think of evangelism in security as making sure everyone in the company can answer these 2 simple questions. How will we get hacked, and why does security matter? This ensures that the why security matter answers at getting everyone bought in on your security program and understanding where you're coming from when you ask to focus on security at times. And how we'll get hacked is just a simple way of measuring that you're all aligned on top risks, which also allows you to align on prioritization downstream. This blog post by Colin Green is the one read I'd recommend on fixing security bugs. It's rare you get such an open-eyed, clear take on what it can actually involve to work with engineering teams, both from your own requirements around ensuring prioritization and communication is clear, all the way through some of the very specific psychological leverage you can involve in helping engineering teams resolve these issues and measuring it. In identity, the biggest takeaway for me is that absolute minimal privilege is not desirable. I think in cloud security, we've spent a few years fixating on least privilege as an absolute and as something we can automate our way towards convergence with. And frankly, for most companies, most of the time, this is not the highest leverage thing you could be doing with limited resources. And in fact, it can be counterproductive when it sort of makes life harder for the engineers you work with. On the detection side, I was really proud that Ryan, who I respect, wrote this blog post the day before my talk. And I already had this sort of joke screenshot from the Cloud Security Forum. I've recently started pitching, avoiding writing detections for the sake of detections, avoiding over indexing on, again, like with vulnerabilities, like the dashboard of problems, overdoing it on coverage and visibility when you don't have the ability to action it. Ryan obviously has a much more well-written take on this approach to detection engineering and how to get prioritized leverage out of your detection engineering program. Overall, the takeaways from the talk are you should build guardrails, establish invariants, offer secure defaults, and kill areas of risk. IAM, vulnerability management, and detection engineering are where you can really take advantage of Pareto security, get 80% of the value from 20% of the investment. And finally, make sure throughout this process you are collecting the data needed to make these investments in a data-driven way and also to report upwards and outwards. The link to the deck is available on this slide, as well as to my Twitter and my website, where I have written 30 blogs in the last 6 months or so on security. So I hope you enjoy them.